And there's our great friend Brandon Marcello, CBS Sports 247 Sports, joining us where there's never anything much to talk about when it comes to college athletics or football. Brandon, thank you, man. So there was this powwow yesterday in the Dallas area, the college football playoff commissioners. A lot of talk leading up to it, but it didn't seem like much came out of it. Your thoughts about what really was discussed, and is this just another meeting?
Well, it was kind of a follow-up meeting from, January around the national championship where they're going over a lot of boring stuff like logistics of all the bowl sites with semifinals and national championships, how everything went this past year, and ticket sales moving forward, and also just like emergency contingency plans if there's issues with games and things like that. But of course, during that 8 or 9 hour or so meeting, they also discussed the format of the playoff, and specifically this upcoming season, the last year of this original contract with ESPN. And the Big Ten and SEC want to be able to make this a seeding straight kind of format. And by that, I mean they would get rid of the 4 highest ranked conference champions getting first round buys, and instead would just say whoever's 1 through 4 in the committee's rankings would end up getting the first round bye. No decision was made there. No vote was taken there. They needed to have a unanimous vote of approval to get this done for a 1-year term, because remember, another TV contract goes into effect for 6 years, starting with the 26th season. And with that, also the understanding with a new agreement among the board and the management committee that the SEC and Big Ten have the power to enact changes with the college football playoff, but only when doing so when there's good faith conversations about changes among the other FBS commissioners and Notre Dame's athletics director. These conversations will continue these next few months. They're scheduled to meet again, I believe, in April, and then potentially again in May. I know in May, the group that oversees the management committee, the board of managers, meets in May. And at that time, they're wanting to hear something about a plan for what 26 and beyond looks like. So here's what the timeline looks like to me in my eyes from talking to folks. It looks like they'll probably figure something out with this seeding, whether they go with that new format, probably sometime between now and May. And then sometime in May, I think we might actually have something in place as far as where they're heading with the 26 and beyond playoff format, whether they go to 14 teams. And of course, the big debate right now, whether they're going to give multi-automatic qualifiers to all the power conferences, starting with 4 for the Big Ten and 4 for the SEC. Where will this all go? Well, yesterday they did discuss some of the stuff for 26 and beyond, but nothing really in a big official capacity. They were just kind of throwing ideas around. The Big Ten and SEC and what they desire, which is those 4 automatic qualifiers, wasn't presented as an official proposal, like here's what we want and what we would like to see, and let's discuss this. My belief is that's going to come later down the road. This all leaked in the media here the last couple of weeks. We know even for the last year or so, the Big Ten and SEC had previously been kind of pushing behind the scenes the idea of having 3 automatic qualifiers from their conferences. Now it's been bumped up to 4. A lot of the commissioners outside these power conferences especially, they're hoping that this is not necessarily an ultimatum, because the SEC and Big Ten take over majority control of the voting power of everything starting in 26. They hope this is just a start for the negotiation process and they can work down from there. But right now, when we talk about the long-term plans for the playoff, expanding it and doing the multiple automatic qualifiers and even the seeding, there's some pushback on this from everybody outside those 2 power conferences.
Why would any of the conferences outside of like them giving them more money capitulate this year at all? It doesn't seem to have any benefit, even though, yes, like in the sense of let's make the tournament better, but let's do this better has never been the mantra of the SEC or the Big Ten. It's always what benefits us. So why would anybody capitulate anything to them that they didn't have to, including next year if they don't have to do that in automatic qualifiers?
Yeah, when we're talking about seeding, I think that's something that could definitely be put on the back burner and not even come into play for next season. Again, they could make this decision to just do the straight seeding format probably as late as August, as one commissioner told me. They could punt this down the road because it isn't like they're dealing with, well, we got to move bowl sites or anything like that. It's just we're going to change the format of the seeding process, so 1 through 12. I don't know where that's going to stand, if that's going to get approved or not, because that has to be unanimous among the 10 FBS conferences and Notre Dame's athletics director for that to be enacted. But starting in 2026, the SEC and Big Ten, if they really want to, they can strong arm this and just go, this is what it's going to be. We're going to do 4 automatic qualifiers for us. The ACC and Big 12, you get 2 each year, and then we'll give 1 to the highest ranked group of 5 champion, and then 1 at large, and that'll be it. So in a lot of ways, they could sit in that boardroom for 2 or 3 meetings and listen to all the concerns and pushback from all the other conferences. But at the end of the day, starting with the 26 playoff, it's the SEC and Big Ten show. They are the ones with the power in that room to make decisions. And according to the language in the contract and the understanding among all those conference commissioners they agreed to about a year ago, the SEC and Big Ten can enact whatever they really want as long as they have a conversation in the room with everybody and then go from there. So why would they give up this power? The smaller conferences, the Big 12 or ACC, well, they gave it up about a year ago in writing by deciding that. And now the SEC and Big Ten are in position, if they want to take this all the way across the goal line, even if they're all hanging off their tails saying, no, we're trying to bring you back to reality here.
Brandon, do you think this was inevitable, the expansion, the reshuffling of the seeding, or is this a result of, hey, Arizona State gets rated higher than some teams that maybe on paper were better than them, or, it's Boise State getting in and having a higher seed? Was this a reaction to what just happened, or was this going to be happening in your mind anyways?
I think it's a reaction to what just happened, very much so, because of what you just mentioned. Arizona State getting that first round bye, Boise State getting a first round bye, because remember, if they went with straight seeding, which is what the SEC and Big Ten want going into next year, this upcoming season, you would have seen Penn State and Texas get first round byes. And also as a result, they get bigger paydays. You get a certain amount of money for making the playoff, but then you get $8 million if you get to the quarterfinals. And if you have a first round bye, you don't have to play a single game to get a bigger payday to your conference and as a result to those teams. Again, not to say everything is driven by money, but a lot of this is driven by money. Another thing to look at beyond this, the long term, because as much as we want to talk about the seeding stuff, I don't think that really is going to matter. I mean, it might matter for 1 year, because even if they stuck to a straight seeding philosophy going forward in 26, if they're doing multiple automatic qualifiers, it pretty much eliminates that. And all you're talking about is maybe 1 or 2 teams looking at that, trying to get into the playoff based off rankings, because they already have those 4 AQs from the Big Ten, the SEC, and then 2 from the ACC and Big 12. So what this looks to me like is that the possibility of expanding the playoff to 14 teams, doing the AQs, allows the SEC, the Big Ten, even to a certain extent the ACC and Big 12 to do play-in games. So instead of having championship weekend, instead of having an ACC championship game, SEC beyond that, you can do play-in games. If you are a conference that is assured you're going to get 4 teams in, why wouldn't you conduct 4 games on your championship weekend with 8 opponents? You take your 8 top teams in your standings, have them face off against each other on championship weekend, and then the winners of those games get those 4 AQs from your conference. Why would you do that? TV money. Because then you could take this whole new package. We've got all these games with championship weekend and sell it to ESPN or their other broadcast partners. That's a big thing. Also, if they do this, the SEC will feel more comfortable in saying, well, at the very least, we're going to get 4 teams into the playoff every year, if not 5. We're going to get our money anyway, and the visibility. Now we don't have to worry about strength of schedule. And now we can schedule, instead of 8 conference games, we can go to 9 conference games. And also, we can put together another TV package by doing an agreement with the Big Ten and doing cross-conference matchups every year. So something that could even change every year or every 2 years. You could take the Big Ten champion from last year against the SEC champion from this year and have them face off, say, in the season opener. You have some flexibility there if you're able to kind of put that together. And if you sell it as a TV package to Fox, ESPN, whoever, you're able to get more money. Again, everybody's digging deep. They're looking for money in this new revenue sharing aspect of everything. So again, that's really the big driver in all this potential change.
Remember the kickoff classic in New Jersey that they did back, I think, in the 80s when you had a team that maybe won a national title and another team that pushed for it? They played that game in August, at the end of August, to kick off the year, which is kind of what you were talking about, Big Ten and SEC. If you have that weekend where there are 4 games, 1 and 2, to win the conference title and then the rest of the way, you're going to get 5, aren't you? You're going to get the 4 winners, and the 1 and 2 losers, they're getting in as an at-large. So isn't that like basically guaranteeing your conference 5?
If you're looking for a wheeled cooler, this is the Arctic 52-quart ultralight wheeled cooler. I hauled it on a deck, I hauled it downstairs, upstairs, grass, gravel, sandy road, mud puddles, the whole bit. And I gotta say, it is pretty darn tough. I really do like the wheels and the tow handle. It's easy to hold on to, even when full. It made it 6 full days with ice present, still keeping cool enough temperatures to keep drinks cold. This is a great cooler. And if you're looking for a new wheeled cooler that tows really nicely, this is a great option.
Potentially, but in that aspect, you could either be saying the SEC gets 5 or the Big Ten gets 5. Both of them probably can't, because at this point, there's only a spot for 1 at large. You could also argue that the Big 12 could get 3 in, or the ACC could get 3 in. No conference is going to be able to get more than 1 beyond their commitment there, the 4 AQs, 3 or the 2 AQs at this point.
Brandon Marcello with us on 365 Sports.
Brandon, on those play-in games, why would I watch those? Like, I'm a little curious as just a fan of, well, I know, like, and you're trying, I know you're the Big Ten, you have all these eyes anyway, so it's just kind of you adding into that. But why, as a fan, like, if I'm a Kansas State fan, why do I care?
Well, you could potentially put yourself in a situation where, say, it's the 2 versus 3 team in your conference, right? And let's say your number 3 team is ranked, number 11 in the committee rankings. If that number 3 team loses to the number 2 team, they would have ended the regular season in the playoff potentially. But if they lose that game, even though they're the number 3 seed, they can be bumped out completely and not get that at-large spot. So that makes it more interesting. Also, depending on how they do these play-in games, I mean, the SEC could technically do a 1 versus 8 instead of 1 versus 2. So what if the number 8 team beats the number 1 team, and that number 1 team gets bumped all the way down to where they don't get an at-large? That's a possibility. And then also you open the door for a team that maybe went down the stretch and was hot to have a play-in game. So the idea, the belief, I guess, when you look at all this, is that if you set up those type of matchups, maybe you would have those teams, for example, like we saw this year, a South Carolina or an Ole Miss potentially be able to play their way into the fold, whereas they wouldn't have this past season.
Brandon, let me know if I'm wrong here, but if the SEC and Big Ten get more and more and more and more. Now they want more money because they'll get more automatic, more qualifiers, AQs, or whatever. What if the Big 12 and the ACC, who have no power after this year, what if they were given more sugar to accept the 4-4-2-2? Would that matter, or would the Big Ten and SEC have to do that because they don't have to do that?
I mean, they could technically, but remember, they've already agreed on, because going forward in 26 and beyond, it's not like you're going to get this amount if you have this many teams go in the fold, or if they go to the second round, third round, et cetera. They've got these rates now set in where the Big Ten, SEC, I can't remember the exact percentage, are getting a certain amount of the pie, Big 12, et cetera. They could tweak that, certainly, to keep them happy, because in the end, we're only probably talking about a few $1,000,000, and that's not really going to hurt the SEC and Big Ten. Because I believe that the main impetus for this, for the SEC and Big Ten, is to create different TV packages among those two conferences. When we're talking about play-in games, that's a completely new invention. And then also a Big 10 SEC challenge, which is a completely new thing. And then also from the SEC aspect, getting one extra SEC game every year from going from 8 to 9. And also remember, the SEC and Big Ten aren't afraid of any of this. And I don't think they're afraid to push this in front of this, of the management committee. Because remember, a year ago, the SEC and Big Ten told everybody in that room, we'll take our ball and go home and go create our own playoff between the SEC and Big Ten. And that put everybody else in the corner and said, okay, let's agree, whatever they want. And now the SEC and Big Ten have all the power over what this playoff looks like. But that doesn't mean there can't be some negotiations amongst everybody and maybe some little bit of a compromise. But right now, I mean, I wouldn't expect the SEC and Big Ten just to go, all right, so what do you guys want? Let's do it that way. No, the SEC and Big Ten are going to get something along the lines of what they're pitching right now here in the near future.
And Brandon, I do wonder though. I'm one, and maybe just because I love chaos. If I were the other teams, I would dare them to do it, because I do think that they're thinking that college football and the NFL are the same is wrong. I think that people like college football because it is much more universal than the NFL, and that you can't have a proper national championship if you're just two leagues.
That'd be an interesting thing to see. I don't get the feeling that they're going to call the SEC and Big Ten's bluff in that room. If they were going to do that, they would have done it last year when the SEC and Big Ten just made the big statement of, well, if you guys aren't going to let us do it this way, as far as us having more control over things, we'll just leave. We'll go start our own playoff. And everybody kind of went, oh, no, don't leave yet. We'll figure something out. But if they wanted to bluff, they could try it. But again, the eyes are probably mostly going to be, I mean, look at the ratings these past 3-4 years. Most teams that are watched are in the SEC and Big Ten when you look at the ratings. And that's what they're counting on. And that's what they're afraid of in these other conferences. And of course, you open the door potentially also, if the SEC and Big Ten go and do their own thing, you're also threatening the potential for all of college football, not just for the playoff, but the SEC and Big Ten also saying, we're not scheduling any of your teams in the ACC, Big 12, or the group of 6 conferences. You guys go play each other, and we'll just keep playing each other ourselves and play 12 games or maybe 11 games between the SEC and Big Ten with one FCS opponent every year, and then go make more money off of that.
Yeah, they've got the dudes and all that. There's no question. But would that truly be recognized as a national champion the way it is today and the way it has been the last 100 years?
No, we'll go back to those. We'll go back to the days of having multiple national champions.
Yeah, AP, UPI, whatever it was. Yeah.
I mean, we could potentially see that. I think, if we did that, you would have people go, that was the smaller school champion, Texas Tech or whatever, winning the national championship among the other conferences, and then the other ones with the SEC and Big Ten. It's not impossible. I mean, I know it sounds crazy we're saying all this, but it's not impossible. But what is crazy to me is that we've gone within the span of 5 years since the pandemic started, where everybody's kind of opening things up and doing blue sky thinking with like, what can we do to improve college sports, to the point now where everybody's back in their silos and no one's really concerned about the health of college athletics. They're just looking to go do their own thing and be richer for it and protect their own brand. And I thought Jim Phillips made a great comment yesterday, the commissioner of the ACC, to my buddy Ross Dellinger, colleague at Yahoo Sports, where he mentioned, and this is not a direct quote, but he mentioned, like, as commissioners, we're only here for a short time. We're not going to be commissioners forever. Someone else is going to step into our job. We got to look out for the better of college athletics. We can't just be focused on what's good for, the ACC or the SEC or whatever. We have to make sure this enterprise lasts beyond us. And Jim Phillips has been saying this for years, and the media and some fans have criticized him greatly for it, saying, oh, he's just weak. The ACC's falling behind. He's too afraid to try and go get Notre Dame and all this stuff. You remember a couple years ago when he talked about how college athletics is a neighborhood, but now that there's some neighborhoods that have gates in front of them, they're gated communities, some of these bigger conferences, and people made fun of him for that. Go, well, get better, do better. It's not our fault you signed a bad contract or whatever with your broadcast partner, but he still has a point, because right now the idea of conference loyalty as a fan, have loyalty to your team, but this all, I mean, fans chanting their conference name over and over again at the end of games and everything, like, by doing that, you're just completely being divisive for the rest of college football fans. And I think a lot of that's been ingrained in us over the last 10 years or so, people chanting SEC or whatever. And it's become like almost this mocking thing where if you're not the SEC, you're not this, or if you're not the Big Ten, you're not this or whatever. And it's hurt things just in the zeitgeist of the fanhood. And I think commissioners have kind of leaned into that quite a bit. And now with the money being an issue, money's driving everything. And it's kind of easier for these commissioners to kind of ride the wave a little bit. Is it the good thing for college sports? I mean, as a reporter who's objective, I don't see how it is. I don't see how you do this and all of a sudden you're going to be able to keep programs like the likes of Baylor or, Kansas State or something actively involved in the process where you're saying once every 2 or 3 years, maybe they're in the playoff. Because what you're doing now, there's been a sea change, multiple sea changes just since the pandemic. And we're about to see our biggest one yet with NIL also being compounded with revenue sharing. There's going to be a greater divide and split among a lot of schools. And there's going to be some schools, I'm telling you, that are in power conferences right now that are going to be left behind a little bit. And they're going to go from middle tier in a conference to maybe in the bottom tier of the conference, or even if they are in the middle tier of the conference, they're never going to get in the playoff. And they're just going to be they're going to tell the fans you have to be happy with 7 wins a year. That's not going to set well with them because they're not going to be able to compete financially and monetarily with everybody. And the boosters are not going to want to be pouring more money into those teams as well.
Yeah, a lot of those schools have put in hundreds of millions of dollars in facilities and many things, and all of a sudden that doesn't help you get to the next level. That's not going to go over very well.
Yeah, Brandon, I often use when it comes to the conference pride thing, fans at Mississippi State chanting SEC is like you going to the gym and me saying, well, that's it. I know, Brandon, we worked out today. Like, no. You didn't, like, Mississippi State's not lifting any of these weights. Georgia and Alabama and LSU, they lifted a ton of weights. You guys are just, at the meeting. Like, that's it. So I've never understood it, and I've never understood why fans in it have bought into it so much, because if I'm a Mississippi State fan, the last thing I want to see is Lane Kiffin do well or Brian Kelly do well. I don't know why I'd be like, yay, the SEC won. Doesn't help me.
You're exactly right. And, it's funny because when we get in the postseason, the bowls, we talk about bowl standings. We talk about the SEC is, 6-1 and the Big Ten's 4-1, the Big 12's this or whatever. And it feeds into that. And everything's competitive, obviously, in sports. So we're like finding new ways to make things competitive. And over the last 10 years or so, I think, even before this was a dream of revenue sharing and everything, and a expanded playoff for that matter, we've put it into our DNA to where if our team isn't playing, we got to be rooting for the other teams in our conference if they're playing a different conference teammate. I don't necessarily understand it, but again, I think this is like it's been rooted, it's reprogrammed our DNA, and it's like it's filtered down into what we're seeing now when we see these conference commissioners get in these rooms, and it's like everybody's against each other. SEC and Big Ten are off doing their own thing, and it's just like, what are they doing there? We don't know. Like they depend on report. Like I talked to so many of these people, and they're like, so what are you hearing? Because we're not hearing anything. It's scary. It's very scary for all these commissioners out there. And I think that's also, there's a lot of reasons why you see a lot of athletic directors stepping down or coaches leaving the fold. Everything's changing drastically. And it's anyone's bet, what things are going to look like in a few years. But certainly, now, I know I'm going everywhere here, but I'll say this. When it started being leaked that the SEC and Big Ten wanted 4 automatic qualifiers and then filtered that down where you'd only have 1 at-large team and then the 14-team playoff, the fan reaction was resoundingly negative. Even from SEC fans, I've noticed on social media, emails, and things I've received. And you would think at some point, these commissioners would sit back and look at that and go, oh, wait, this isn't a good idea. I don't follow soccer very much, but what was it a couple years ago? Someone was like trying to create another league, another super league.
Yeah, they wanted to leave the normal leagues and just be all the big teams. So Manchester United, Real Madrid, and the fans at Man U fans or whatever, like, no, we'll play them in the Champions League. That's fine. Like every couple years, we don't care. But no, I want to beat Liverpool because I don't go to Madrid every day, but I damn sure want to beat Liverpool.
And I think we're in a similar circumstance here, don't you think?
Yeah.
This is what this all kind of sounds like. And it's kind of scary because as of right now, again, the Big Ten and SEC haven't officially put this on the table. Go, here's our plan. This is how it would work. But even if they do that, again, they have the power to make this decision pretty much on their own. Mm-hmm. All they got to do is, Like technically all they got to do is sit in that room and just act like they're listening. And they go, okay, we're doing it anyway, because now they have the voting power. But again, at some point, the fans matter, of course, and it's been resoundingly negative. Also, I think that all this has been happening so quickly, everything from this to revenue sharing, that still hasn't even been enacted, all this stuff. I mean, now we're talking about canceling spring games, maybe getting rid of spring practices and going to OTA style stuff. They're asking more from fans than ever, monetarily, everything, but they're giving them less than
Yes, absolutely.
And at some point, there's a breaking point there, right? Maybe not all fans, obviously, but you're going to just kind of rot away some fans. Because I think of this, and a lot of conversations I've had with folks, not everybody can go to the shoe during the regular season and watch Ohio State play. It's too expensive. You got to take time off to work to travel up there, hotel and all that stuff. So a lot of fans, they'll go to Fan Day, right, in the summer, or they'll go to the spring game and make a weekend of it where tickets are either free or like $5. And you're able to sit anywhere you want. You take your family up there, and your little kids who don't even know the difference between a real game and a scrimmage are in awe of that. And then after that spring scrimmage, usually the players, they have like an autograph session for everything. And that's the entry point for a lot of fans. The fans of 20 years from now are the fans that are going to spring games and all that stuff. And now we're talking about taking that away just for the matter of, well, money. And also, well, the season's just getting too long. We don't want to get players injured. And also, we don't want it on TV right now because we feel like we're getting tampered with and there's people are stealing our roster and stealing our players. But no one's asking what the fans want. And at some point, you're either going to realize that and go, we got to course correct here, or you're going to keep doing all this and you're going to piss enough of them off. You're going to start noticing dwindling returns in a time where they need more money than ever on the college level.
And by the way, that could be viewers too, which is where all the big money comes from. This is from Bracket Cat. He's a K-State fan. Well, this is an effing depressing segment. Kansas State. Last question. With Sankey and also Petiti leaving the meeting without making any comments, was that because they weren't happy or there's nothing for them to say?
Yeah, I can't speak for them. I wasn't there in Dallas for all this, but back in January at their first meeting for moving forward, they did the same thing. They didn't speak to us. My belief is they just don't want to discuss all these, not hypotheticals, but everything that's leaked in the media because they haven't said anything publicly. They haven't said, yes, this is what we want or whatever. Now, they did say that they wanted to discuss seeding. Mm-hmm. They said that last week outside their SEC Big Ten meetings. But, I mean, I think it's probably an optics thing, right? You don't want to go out there and look like you're the leader of that group when you haven't yet presented your plan. You can't start making threats or even saying this or that about something you haven't talked to with your constituents in that room among the other people. There's some respect there as far as that's concerned.
Brandon, this is a fantastic segment, man. We've covered quite a bit. We appreciate it. And you're right, at times it's kind of scary. And then so many things have come together at once in the last 4 years, from the COVID year, transfer portal, NIL, which is changing almost daily, to the realignment, to conference realignment, to the college football. This is a lot. Like this would overload and overheat a car.
This is something that should have started at the turn of the century.
Yeah.
I'm being honest.
I agree.
It's been worked out over 20 to 25 years.
Yeah.
All of this stuff, and instead we're shoving it all down our throats in 4 years trying to work on an airplane. I hate that saying, but they literally are putting an airplane together in the air as they're flying it.
Thank you, buddy. Great stuff. Really, really fantastic segment. Brandon Marcello with us, CBS Sports 247 Sports.